What if the moment your loved one tries to desperately escape rehab isn't actually a sign that treatment is failing, but, the definitive proof that it's finally working?
Right, which is completely counterintuitive because we spend so much time dreading that exact scenario.
Yeah, viewing it as this like massive threat to all their progress.
Yeah.
So today on this deep dive, we are looking at the phone call every family absolutely dreads.
Oh, the worst
Yeah,
ones.
the phone rings, you pick it up, and on the other end, someone you love, someone you finally, after all this effort, got into an addiction treatment center, says, I can't stay here. Come pick me up right now.
It is the specific juncture where the entire family system gets thrown right back into crisis mode. I mean,
Yeah.
you have likely spent months, maybe even years, navigating the absolute chaos of their addiction.
Mm.
You endure the intervention, the logistical nightmare of finding a bed, the financial stress of it all, and you finally exhale, right? Because they're safe.
You think you can finally sleep?
Exactly. And then 3 days or 3 weeks later, that one phone call just shatters the illusion of safety.
It really does. So our mission today is to provide you, the listener, with a practical, empathetic roadmap for navigating this terrifying moment. We're going fundamentally into the psychological triggers behind that sudden urge to leave.
Which is so important to understand.
Yeah, and we're breaking down how to establish boundaries that actually protect both you and your loved one's recovery. Plus, we're going to explore the mechanics of the medical system so you know exactly what your options are when the pressure's really on.
We are dissecting that really narrow space between your instinct to panic and the clinical reality of what is actually happening in your loved one's brain. Because how you handle the response to that single phone call can dictate whether they stay in the safety of a clinical environment or, unfortunately, return to a life-threatening situation.
Absolutely. And to guide this roadmap, we are leaning heavily into a truly vital resource today. Our deep dive is anchored by an incredible article called What to Do When a Loved One Wants to Leave Rehab Early, California Family Guide.
That's a great one.
Yeah, it was published by New Life Recovery Centers in San Jose, California. And combining their guide with, clinical insights from other top treatment centers gives us a really concrete plan for a moment that usually feels completely chaotic.
It really does. And what I love about the New Life Guide is that it treats this scenario not as some rare anomaly, but as an expected phase of the recovery process.
Right.
Just that framing alone that this is normal completely changes how a family approaches the crisis.
It totally shifts the perspective.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into the point of impact, the phone call itself. When a family member hears those words, come get me, the immediate visceral reaction is usually just anger.
Oh, 100%.
You want to yell, you want to list all the sacrifices you made to get them there, and you just want to lecture them into staying. But it's essentially a psychological tug of war, right? If they pull toward the exit and you pull back with anger and judgment, they just pull harder.
They absolutely do. And the underlying mechanism there is the brain's fight or flight response. I mean, when someone in early recovery calls you demanding to leave, their amygdala is fully activated.
Just totally lit up.
Yes. They are operating from a place of pure, unadulterated panic. So if you meet their panic with your own frustration or anger, you just validate their internal narrative.
Which is that the world is hostile and they need to escape.
Exactly. The New Life Recovery Guide emphasizes that the absolute most crucial first step is to drop your end of the rope. You just have to slow the decision down.
And slowing it down means recognizing that, you don't have to give a yes or no answer in that split second.
Right. You really don't.
You're simply trying to de-escalate. So you can lean into empathetic language like, I hear that you're struggling and I really want to understand. Can we agree that you'll stay just until tomorrow and we can talk to your counselor together?
You're basically just buying time for the clinical team to do their jobs. But, and this is a big but, there is a vital precursor to hitting that pause button.
Oh, the safety check.
Yes, you have to do a rapid triage to differentiate between an emotional crisis and a genuine medical emergency.
Right, which means asking one very specific question, which is, are you safe?
You have to rule out immediate physical danger. Like, are they experiencing severe, unmanaged withdrawal symptoms, hallucinations, chest pain?
Or like if there's a fight happening.
Exactly. Are they articulating a plan for self-harm, or is there a physical altercation at the facility? If the answer involves immediate physical danger, you do not pause. That requires a 911 call or an immediate clinical intervention on the spot.
So you're assessing whether the threat is biological or psychological.
That's exactly.
Okay, so assuming it is psychological, they're safe, but they're just panicking. I want to push back on this a little because it feels like being asked to defuse a bomb with zero training. You know,
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
your instinct is to just yank all the wires to make it stop, but the manual's telling you to just hit pause on the timer. But what if the loved one is just incredibly persuasive or, frankly, manipulative?
Which they often are.
Right. So how do you resist the urge to just drive over and get them when they are literally crying on the phone telling you the staff is cruel or the conditions are awful, saying, let's talk tomorrow? Feels almost impossible to actually execute.
It feels impossible because the disease of addiction conditions the family just as much as it conditions the individual.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, you have been trained over years to react to their emergencies. So by saying, let's wait until tomorrow, you are actively breaking the demand-comply cycle.
You're stepping out of the dance.
Precisely. You are stepping out of the dynamic where they manufacture a crisis, and you scramble to fix it. It forces this wedge of time into the situation, which often causes the immediate intense craving or panic to subside just enough for rational thought to return.
That makes a lot of sense. So once you've successfully driven that wedge of time into the crisis, we have to look at why the panic is happening in the first place. I was reading through the new Life Guide, and it really struck me that when they call to complain, it is almost never about the actual complaint.
No, almost never.
If they say the facility food is inedible or, their roommate is annoying or the schedule is too rigid, that's just a smokescreen, right?
It's a complete projection. Leaving treatment doesn't mean the treatment is flawed. It frequently means the individual has hit the most grueling part of the clinical work.
The real work.
Yeah. The physical detox phase is over. The substances are out of their system, which means their primary coping mechanism for every trauma, anxiety, and fear they possess is just gone. They are completely exposed.
It reminds me of a kid faking a stomachache on a Tuesday morning
Yeah.
because they're terrified of a math test.
Yes. That's a perfect analogy.
Like, they aren't consciously lying about feeling sick. The anxiety is manifesting as real physical discomfort in their stomach. But the stomach isn't the root problem, the mass test is.
Right.
In rehab, the stomachache is complaining about the restrictive rules, but the math test is the terror of actually living a sober life.
Exactly. They are being asked to sit with their own thoughts, often for the first time in years, without any chemical insulation.
Which has to be terrifying.
It is. And that includes confronting the collateral damage of their addiction, the lost jobs, the fractured relationships. The sheer weight of that reality is just staggering.
So when they say, I need to leave because my roommate snores, they're really saying,
The emotional translation is, I am profoundly overwhelmed by my own mind, and I desperately want relief.
wow. Which really highlights how incredibly high the stakes are here. Because leaving against medical advice, leaving AMA, means they're basically walking out into that psychological blizzard without a coat.
That's exactly what it is.
Completing the prescribed treatment is what gives them the coping skills to handle that fear. If they leave early, the risk of a fatal overdose often spikes, right? Because their tolerance has dropped during detox. But the psychological compulsion to use is higher than ever.
It's incredibly dangerous. The gap between being physically detoxed and being psychologically equipped is the most dangerous window in recovery.
Yeah.
This is why the family's response to that phone call is so pivotal. If the family caves to the complaints, they are inadvertently helping the individual avoid the necessary life-saving work of building new coping mechanisms.
And that brings us to the hardest line a family has to draw. Because empathy is vital, sure, but empathy without boundaries just becomes enabling.
It really does. It crosses that line so fast.
You have to figure out how to be supportive without facilitating their exit. There's a framework we looked at in the research from FHE Health called SANITY.
Right, the SANITY acronym.
Yeah, it's an acronym to help families hold their ground. S is stop enabling, A is assemble a team, N is no to bad behaviors, I is implement boundaries, T is trust your gut, and Y is yes to signs of recovery.
It's a great tool.
It is, but the part that really tripped me up was the T, trust your gut.
How so?
Well, when your child or your spouse is crying on the phone begging for you, your parental or partner gut is screaming to go rescue them.
Of course it is.
So trusting your gut in this scenario actually means overriding your most fundamental biological instinct to save them. That seems impossible.
It does feel impossible because it requires a complete rewiring of what you consider saving them to mean.
Yeah.
The disease has hijacked your instincts. Enabling looks like love in the short term, providing a soft landing, paying for a hotel, picking them up so they aren't on the streets. But enabling is actually insulating them from the consequences of their disease.
It's keeping them sick.
Exactly. Healthy support, on the other hand, is things like participating in family therapy or transporting them to clinical appointments, coordinating with their team. As the new Life Guide explicitly advises, you must not automatically become the exit plan.
Okay, so you can offer to help them transition safely to a different treatment program, but you firmly refuse to help them return to an environment where they'll likely use again.
Yes.
But how do you communicate that without starting World War III?
Yeah.
The Smart Recovery materials actually outline a brilliant conflict-reducing formula for
Oh,
this.
I love the smart recovery formula.
Yeah, instead of using accusatory language like, you're ruining our family by quitting, you frame it entirely around your own experience.
Mm.
It's a three-part boundary formula. I feel X when Y happens. Can I ask you to Z?
It just completely de-escalates the conversation because it removes the attack on their character.
Right, it's not about them being bad.
Exactly. You say, I feel terrified when you threaten to leave treatment without a medical plan. Can I ask you to stay one more night and speak with the lead clinician?
You're stating your emotional reality.
And you're making a reasonable request, which is just much harder for them to fight against than a lecture.
We often hear boundaries described as brick walls, which sounds so punitive to me. I prefer to think of them as guardrails on a treacherous mountain road.
That's a really good visual.
The guardrail isn't there to punish the driver or, restrict their freedom. It's simply a rigid structure placed at the edge of a cliff to keep the car from going over.
The guardrail defines the limits of safety. But establishing that guardrail requires the family to accept a terrifying reality, which is that you might have to watch them bump against it.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
You might have to say no to giving them a ride or a place to sleep, knowing full well they might end up in a dangerous situation.
And when you're sitting there holding the phone, realizing you have to say no to giving your own loved one a ride, you're fighting every ounce of your own humanity.
You really are.
How does a parent or spouse physically enforce that without feeling like they're just abandoning the person they love to a terrible fate?
You enforce it by shifting your perspective on abandonment entirely. If you bail them out, bring them home, and allow them to return to the exact same behavioral patterns, you are abandoning them to the disease.
Wow. That's powerful.
The disease wants you to provide the ride. Holding the boundary, refusing to participate in that cycle, is actually the ultimate act of fighting for their survival. If you act as their parachute every single time they jump out of treatment, they are never going to learn to pull the ripcord on their own recovery.
That makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let's follow the timeline forward. You've held your guardrail. You refuse to be the exit plan. You use the empathetic communication. And despite all of that, they walk out the front door of the facility anyway.
Which does happen.
The immediate assumption is that recovery has failed and it's just over. But the medical system is actually designed to handle this, right?
It is. Leaving one program does not mean leaving recovery.
Right. So if they walk, the very first thing the family needs to do is contact the facility.
Yeah.
But here, families crash right into federal privacy laws. There's a law called 42 CFR Part 2, which gives addiction treatment this massive, incredibly strict layer of privacy.
Yes, and it is far stricter than standard HIPAA laws.
Really. Stricter than IP.
Oh, absolutely. 42 CFR Part 2 exists because of the historical stigma and the potential criminalization of addiction.
Okay, that makes sense.
The medical community recognized decades ago that people would never seek treatment for illegal substance use if they feared their records could be shared with law enforcement or employers. Consequently, unless your loved one has signed a highly specific consent form, the clinical staff cannot even confirm to you that the patient is in the building, let alone discuss their status.
Which is completely maddening for a parent or spouse who just wants to know if their person is alive.
It's agonizing.
But there is a crucial workaround here, isn't there? The law prevents the clinic from sharing information with you. It does not prevent you from sharing information with the clinic. It can be a one-way street.
Precisely. That is a huge tool for families. You can call the facility, ask for the clinical director, and say, look, I know you cannot confirm if my husband is a patient there. However, I need to report that he just called me, he sounded highly intoxicated, and he stated he was walking down the highway near your facility.
So you're just dropping the information off.
Yes. You are feeding the medical team the data they need to intervene, maybe contact local authorities for a welfare check or at least update his clinical chart. You empower the professionals to act on the outside.
That is so important to know. Okay, let's say they leave. They are safe, but they are absolutely adamant that they will not go back to that specific residential facility. Like the environment was genuinely too intense for them.
It happens.
Listening to the new life guide, it became really clear that rehab is not a binary pass-fail test.
Not at all.
It's not this scenario where you either stay 30 days in a twin bed and graduate, or you walk out and fail entirely. It's much more like dialing in a medical prescription.
That is the perfect way to conceptualize the continuum of care. I mean, if a doctor prescribes a medication and the patient has an overwhelming adverse reaction to the dosage, the doctor doesn't just cancel the treatment and tell the patient to give up.
Right, they wouldn't just throw the medicine away entirely.
Exactly. They adjust the dosage, they try a different delivery method.
So if full inpatient residential care is like the maximum dosage and it's causing severe psychological resistance, they can step down to a partial hospitalization program, or PHP.
Yes, PHP is a great step down.
That's where they get structured, intense clinical treatment during the day, but they actually sleep at a sober living home or their own house at night.
It relieves the pressure cooker environment of a 247 facility while still maintaining that necessary medical oversight.
And if PHP is still too disruptive, there's the intensive outpatient program, the IOP.
Right. IOP allows for flexible scheduling. The patient can begin reintegrating into their job or family life while attending therapy sessions several times a week.
And the new life guide also highlights virtual IOP, utilizing telehealth, which I thought was fascinating.
It's uniquely valuable right now.
Yeah, for someone whose social anxiety or, trauma makes walking into a traditional clinical setting a barrier to entry, a virtual IOP basically brings the guardrails directly into their living room.
Moving from residential care to an IOP after leaving early is not a failure. It is a clinical pivot.
A pivot, exactly.
The willingness to engage in a different level of care rather than abandoning treatment entirely is actually a profound indicator of resilience. The goal is just to keep them tethered to the recovery ecosystem in whatever format they can tolerate.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
Yeah.
And man, if you're currently navigating this, it is a lot to carry. So let's synthesize this roadmap.
Good idea.
When that dread-inducing phone call comes, you have to remember your sphere of control. You cannot control your loved one's addiction, and ultimately, you cannot force their choices. But you have absolute control over your own response.
You control the pacing by choosing not to match their panic, by deploying empathy instead of anger, and by routing the crisis back to the clinical professionals. You fundamentally alter the outcome of that moment.
And by building those guardrails, clearly defining what you will support and what you absolutely will not enable, you provide the most stable possible environment for their recovery. And honestly, you reclaim your own peace of mind.
You transition from being a participant in their chaos to being an anchor outside of it.
Exactly. And this entire roadmap we've built today was made possible by the incredibly detailed work of New Life Recovery Centers in San Jose, California.
They do fantastic work.
They really do.
Mhm.
If you or your family is in the middle of this exact storm and you are looking for life-changing addiction recovery treatment, you don't have to figure out this continuum of care on your own. They have the expertise to help you through the residential phases, the outpatient transitions, and literally everything in between.
It's a crucial lifeline for families in crisis.
It is. Call them directly at 408-297-1182. Again, that is New Life Recovery Centers in San Jose at 408-297-1182.
They understand the nuance of that phone call, and they know exactly how to support both the patient and the family through the fallout.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to consider one final, maybe paradigm-shifting thought.
I love this part.
We spent this entire journey focused on how the family can manage the patient's crisis, how to keep them in treatment, how to save their life, basically.
Okay.
But there is a parallel journey happening. The moment you decide to hit pause on that phone call, the moment you refuse to provide the ride home, the moment you establish that guardrail.
Yeah.
Well, it might just be the exact moment your loved one's true healing begins, because they are finally confronting the core wound.
If they're trying to run, the healing has truly begun.
Exactly. But more importantly, it is the definitive moment that your recovery begins. It is the moment you stop being a hostage to the disease.
Setting the boundary doesn't just protect them, it is the very first step in reclaiming your own life.
Keep that in mind the next time the phone rings. You aren't just answering their call, you're answering your own. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves.